Hi there, I am Courtney with UCF Career Services, and today we are going to be talking about networking strategies. And I know networking is sort of one of those buzzwords that we hear, and we're not always exactly sure what we're supposed to be doing about it or what it means. So we are going to really dive into that and talk about some of kind of the nitty-gritty of what networking actually looks like and why it is so beneficial. So what we're going to talk about today and sort of what we hope that you'll get out of it are some networking strategies, certainly, but specifically, we want to help you develop a really great elevator pitch, sometimes also called an infomercial. We want to help you face some of your networking fears, if you have any of those, and then also to help you plan and prepare for networking events, any sort of opportunity that you might come across to network. So the first thing that we need to start with, obviously, is what is networking? And you'll hear and see lots of different definitions of networking, but I want you to know that first and foremost, networking is just relationship building. And so probably this is something that you're already doing on a daily or weekly basis anyways, but maybe you're not calling it networking. So networking is building alliances and relationships with people. Again, just relationship building. You're doing this anyways. It's a powerful tool that will assist you with your job search because, as you may have realized by now, if you've embarked on any sort of job or internship search, it takes personal connections, it takes knowing people to kind of advance in your professional career. But networking can and should start long before a job search. Again, maybe you are only a first or second year student right now. You're still networking. You're networking with the people in your classes. You're networking with your faculty members. You're networking with, friends of family or, folks that your parents might know, your siblings might know, your cousins, aunts, uncles. That is still networking. And we hope that you'll view networking really as an opportunity to tell your story and hear others' stories. It doesn't have to be this formal, awkward, kind of overly stuffy event or occasion. It can be really casual and informal, and it's, again, a chance to build relationships and get to know people and their stories better. Some of the most common networking fears that we tend to hear from students are coming across as disingenuous or inauthentic, fake, a fear of meeting new people in general, not making a good impression, maybe not having anything to talk about, or not fitting in with a group, being sort of an outcast or different than others. And certainly these are all valid fears, right? We all kind of have different fears about creating relationships or building relationships. And so, none of these are bad or wrong, but we want to acknowledge them because we have to kind of know what we're worried about in a networking situation if we're going to be able to overcome it. So it's worth taking a minute and thinking about, am I afraid of any of these things? What gives me, maybe some anxiety about the thought of networking? But we're going to talk, through the rest of this presentation about ways to overcome these fears. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll have some strategies in place so that this doesn't feel so daunting for you. Networking certainly has some great benefits. This is, one of the first ways to start overcoming your fears is to remind yourself just how important and oftentimes fun and exciting networking can be. It's oftentimes even more efficient and effective than just looking for posted job openings. And I'm going to dive into that in just a couple of minutes and kind of share what we mean by that, because that might surprise you to know that networking, can oftentimes better help you land a job than just applying to something that you find online. It also helps you develop an active network of contacts that can help you professionally, personally, with future job searches, finding an internship, getting advice in a different career field. And so we don't want to think of networking as just kind of a one-time event. I'm going to go to this event, I'm going to network, and then I'll be done networking. Networking is building a network, and we want that network to be long-lasting. It's going to be ever-changing. We want you to stay in touch with those people. So we see it really as moving instead of static. Now, back to what I was talking about kind of the perks of networking when we think about finding a job. So right now, when you think about the job market, probably what you think about are looking for jobs on sites like Handshake, Indeed, LinkedIn, and that's great. That's kind of what we call the open market. And so we think about the open market as being, where you go to see what a company has posted. They've said that they have these jobs available. That's great. However, there's also what we call the hidden market. And the hidden market is actually where a majority of jobs are found, are talked about, are networked for, are interviewed for. And so this chart, I know this might be a little bit confusing. On the left-hand side of your screen, you've got the open market. That's where we spend 80% of our time looking for jobs, but it's actually only where about 20% of jobs are available. Again, that open market is, it's what we think of when we go to Indeed to try and find a job. Versus this idea of a hidden market, we spend far less time there, but it's actually where the majority of available jobs are located. And this hidden market, it's people, it's insider knowledge of what a company's doing and what they're looking for and who they're hiring for, and how the job process works and who the most qualified candidates are. That is the hidden job market that we are going to show you how to tap into. Here's another way to look at that. We start at the outermost ring of this circle, the general public, and that represents the open job market. Again, I said we spend 80% of our time there, but it's only about where 20% of the jobs are. Indeed, LinkedIn, Handshake, Monster, any sort of specialized job search sites. That's the open job market. It's available to the general public. It's probably where you're spending the majority of your energy right now. Then we go in a little bit more to the first ring of the hidden job market, and that's referrals. So it's getting to know people specifically who work for companies that you're interested in and having them refer you for different jobs. So for example, let's say that I really want to work for Facebook. That has always been a goal of mine. Well, I could go online and I could probably find some general public Facebook job postings and apply to them. I could take that one step further and I could start to get to know some people who work for Facebook. Maybe I find them on LinkedIn. Maybe I've met them at an event. Maybe I don't even really know them at all. But I come across, their profile, or, they're a friend of a friend. That begins to get into this idea of creating relationships and networking so that they can make a referral on my behalf. Maybe we have coffee, maybe we have a 20-minute phone call. But I'm no longer the general public to them, and they can begin to make a referral that will help me to talk to the right people in the company to get that job. We can take that, even a step further, and we can get to know the decision makers. And this is, networking into an organization to find out who are the right people that I need to be talking about. The job seeker will be directly known to the decision maker, and the decision maker is probably the one hiring. That's what we mean by decision maker. So certainly we want to get into this innermost circle. You'll notice, look how big that innermost circle is. This is not some kind of exclusive place where only a few people can make these relationships. This is available to you if you are willing to put in the work to meet these people. And again, if that still sounds daunting, I totally understand. We're going to dive in even further, and I'm going to tell you how to do that, how to network effectively. But I just share this to share that, if you feel like you have embarked on a job search and it doesn't seem to be going your way, or you've submitted, 50 resumes and you haven't heard back, or you've had one interview, but it wasn't great. Part of the problem potentially with your job search is not your documents. It's not you as a person, as a candidate. It's that you are only accessing that very outer rim of opportunity if you're not making personal connections with folks in industries and organizations that you're interested in working in, and really networking to kind of find out what else is available. So I think what would be really helpful as a start is to jot down some potential contacts or sources for networking. So as you begin to think about where you might get started, I encourage you to get a piece of paper, pause this video, and just jot down what comes to your mind when you think of networking. Are there already some places that you can think of? Maybe it's career services. That's a freebie for everyone. We host networking events with employers across all different industries. So maybe that's the first thing you put on your list, is to really check out the employer networking events that we host. But also think about, outside of our office, who do you already know that you might start to talk to, you might ask questions of, you might start to tell your story to in a networking capacity. So hopefully you came up with a few for your list, but if you didn't, if you're kind of stuck on who exactly we're talking about here. Here is, a robust list of networking sources to think about. This isn't meant to be exhaustive. There are probably, groups or people that we didn't include here just due to space, but this might help you, get started. So a lot of people don't think about, well, my family, what do my family members do for work? Who do they know? Are they in industries that I'm interested in? Can they connect me with their contacts and their network? People I'm in class with now, if you're going into similar industries, you are already networking with your future colleagues, even if you work for different organizations. Think about people that you're in student organizations with, people that you're in professional associations with. Maybe you've joined a professional association related to your industry or your chosen field of study. Alumni networks. You can access UCF's robust alumni network on LinkedIn to start to see, well, what are UCF alumni doing with their degrees and what are they doing with their experience? Certainly you can attend, employer information sessions and other career services events to get to know employers that want to come to campus and specifically recruit UCF students. But you can think about, meeting people through volunteering in your community service, religious organizations that you might be a part of, professors and advisors or mentors. Maybe you have, a professional mentor, or maybe your mentor is a faculty member. People who have supervised you, whether it's, just in a week-long internship or, maybe you have worked a part-time job for 3 years. Think about the people that you're meeting there across all different industries. Then we get into meeting some new people, right? So, all of those are probably connections that you are already building or have already built. But then think about meeting new people via informational interview, which we're going to talk about even more in just a couple of minutes. Social networking sites like LinkedIn, meeting, alumni. You already have something in common. You have UCF in common if they graduated maybe with the same degree a few years back. Networking with those people can be a great opportunity to find out more about what they do and how they like it. So again, keep in mind, networking context does not have to be people that you're close with. This is not limited to people that are already in your phone book. You already have their number. You can go out and seek out new networking connections, and we encourage you to go out and seek out new networking connections. A lot of times people will say, well, isn't that weird? It's, awkward, strange if I'm just reaching out to people. Remember that, especially in a place like LinkedIn online, LinkedIn was created for networking to take place and to happen. And so, people wouldn't be on LinkedIn if they didn't expect that there would probably be folks they didn't know reaching out to them to create new networking connections and relationships. And so that's just something to keep in mind. So let's get into some strategy behind networking. You really do have to make this a priority, whether it's daily or weekly, but you sort of have to schedule it in, I find, at first, or else, you probably don't have it on your priority list. So think about it as adding some homework for yourself. I often tell students to set a goal. So maybe your goal is connecting with 3 new people in an industry that you're interested in every single week. Obviously, your goal might be, higher or lower than that. It's totally dependent on what else you have going on. But I encourage you to set a goal, something that you can sort of stick to and say, this week, have I met my networking goal? Think about the relationship as the ultimate goal. So instead of going in and saying, all right, this week I need to meet somebody who works for Hilton so that I can get hired by Hilton. I encourage you to think about it from a little bit different viewpoint and think, this week, my goal is to make a new relationship with someone who works at Hilton so that I can better understand what they do, how they like it, the culture of Hilton. Think of it more as information gathering that may lead to something else. Certainly it has the potential to lead to a lot of other things, but make the relationship your primary goal. And then approach it in a flexible manner. So we're all human, and especially in this day and age, so much of our lives have become virtual, and we've all had to adapt to that and really show resilience and flexibility. Apply that same approach to your networking. Things change, things come up, and so don't get discouraged if it takes you a few tries to meet with someone or it takes you a few tries to connect with someone. That's totally normal. Some tactics for networking are going to be creating business cards, and we're going to show you how to do that well in just a minute. Social networking, and that certainly includes LinkedIn as a top priority. LinkedIn was created for professional networking, but Networking can certainly happen on other sites as well. It might surprise you to know that lots of employers use sites like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook for their recruiting and networking practices as well. Conducting informational interviews, which we've sort of touched on and we'll touch on further, but again, that is really the idea that you're seeking information, you're creating connections to ask questions to find out how an industry might suit you. What's the good, the bad, and the ugly about a certain type of job or line of work. And oftentimes you're going to need to reach out to people that you don't know to get that information, because chances are you don't know somebody who's doing everything that you're interested in. And then in-person meetings. So really setting up time to chat. Again, in-person meetings, that's, sort of synonymous with Zoom calls these days, right? So it's okay to be flexible and adaptable to that virtual environment. So let's go back to business cards first. These are not just for people who already have jobs. Contrary to popular belief, it's actually really impressive when students and job seekers create their own business cards so that they have something to hand out, especially if you don't often carry, a stack of resumes around in your backpack. If you do, that's excellent. I encourage you to give those to folks. But if you want to have something smaller and a little bit more succinct, you could certainly create a business card using online platforms like Canva. Canva would be a great site to create a business card. But even, Word has templates for creating really simple, straightforward business cards. The most kind of important things that it should include, you see here on the screen: your name, contact information, where you're in school, what you're studying, and hopefully you've created a LinkedIn account with a personalized URL, and you can include that there as well. Some people choose to print these to, you could take them to a FedEx or a Kinko's and have them printed so that you could hand them out. Or some people like to just keep this as a digital copy and then, share it via email or text with people that you're meeting and connecting with in various settings. So sort of just depends on, what you prefer and how much time you have to kind of work on it. So social networking, we mentioned a few minutes ago that employers definitely are social. Most organizations are really starting or have seen for a long time the value of being on different social media platforms like Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And so, it's a friendly reminder that people are looking for you there. Whatever information you put out there into the world is information that you're sharing about yourself and that can be used to form an opinion about you. If you're hoping to connect with someone and they say, well, let me just take a look at this person on LinkedIn or on Facebook or on Twitter, just be cognizant of what they find and what sort of professional brand that is going to be presenting for you, because that's a first impression that you can easily control, but you don't get a do-over on that. And again, my comment that always makes me sound like someone's great grandmother, but whatever you put on the internet, whether or not you delete it, it can never really be deleted. So just, use caution when you're posting things, be cognizant of your privacy settings. And, if it's not something that you'd want your future employer to see, then it's probably not worth posting at all. Let's talk about crafting an elevator pitch. This is going to be your introduction when you're meeting new people. And so a lot of people think, how do I start a conversation with someone that I've never met or that I don't know? And a lot of people, again, hear this, buzz phrase elevator pitch and think, oh, that's intimidating, or I have no idea what that's supposed to include. This is just an answer to the question, tell me about yourself, or, hi, I'm so-and-so, and who are you? So this should be really short and sweet, 30 to 60 seconds long. And really you're giving an introduction that highlights kind of what you bring to the table. So you want to keep this professionally driven. Sometimes I'll meet students at networking events and they'll say, well, hi, my name is so-and-so, I'm studying, XYZ. And, some of my favorite things to do are sailing, I have a dog, I really love hanging out with my parents, and all of that is great. But if I'm a potential future employer, that is not very relevant information to what I'm hoping to find out about you. So I'd rather know what you're studying, when you plan to graduate, have you had any experience already that makes you particularly qualified, or, skills you possess that are really going to make you an asset to my organization. And so you really have to tailor your elevator pitch to whoever you're talking to. And obviously, in some situations, you're not going to know who you're talking to because maybe you're in a group setting, you're meeting a bunch of new people. So it's okay if this is relatively broad when you're first introducing yourself. But again, it's really important to talk about what you're studying, when you plan to graduate and maybe what you're looking for. What are some of your professional goals? Because that will help whoever you're networking with to jump into a conversation about, how those goals are maybe mutually beneficial to their organization. Here's an example of an elevator pitch I just wanted to provide because I know sometimes it can be sort of hard to conceptualize. But if I were a student, I might say something like, hi there, my name's John Smith, and I'm going to be receiving my bachelor's degree in hospitality management in May from UCF. I've been working in the service industry, now for more than 8 years, and that includes hotels, private clubs, and some restaurants. This past summer, I had the opportunity to work as a concierge for Ritz-Carlton Grand Lakes, which has been named best in brand for service in the US. And, currently I'm seeking a front desk manager position in the Orlando area with a full service hotel where I can really contribute my service and managerial skills. So, if I am John Smith, the message that I'm really trying to convey here is that I am seeking a role in hospitality. That's, what I'm studying. It's what I have experience in. I have been working in the service industry already. So even if that includes, internships or part-time jobs, shadowing, it's clear that this person has some experience in hotels, private clubs, and restaurants, which makes them very well-rounded. They give a specific example about their recent work with Ritz-Carlton as a concierge, and they throw in there that particular resort was named best in brand for service, meaning, that person, John Smith, contributed to that, accolade. And then of course they lead in with what they're currently seeking, because that gives the person that they're talking to an opportunity to respond, to say something like, oh, wow, that's, really impressive. It's great to hear that you've been building so much experience. I'd love to talk to you about maybe some front desk manager roles that we plan to be opening in the Orlando area in the next few months, and to see, how you might be a fit for those. So informational interviewing, I know we've hit on this a couple of times, but these are meetings with people who can really provide you some industry insight. And again, I mentioned before, this is really where it's a chance for you to ask questions and gather information. It sort of takes the pressure off, because although there's interviewing in the name, it is not an interview where somebody is, putting you on the spot, usually to see, all right, is there a job that you're applying for? Will we hire you? This is a chance for you to do the question asking. You usually are taking the initiative to set these up on your end. You are reaching out to the different people that you'd like to informationally interview, and you're asking them, about how their job is, what it's like, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What do they do in a typical week? What are some of the challenges about it? What is their favorite part of it? What is the culture like at the company that they work for? What are the benefits like? What advice do they have for somebody in your shoes who is trying to break into that industry? How can you stand out as a candidate? All of these questions are really low stakes, because again, you're asking for information. You're not asking at that moment for a job. So it's much less threatening, much less daunting. They're usually pretty short and sweet. Even 20 to 30 minutes of someone's time is often enough to get kind of a baseline knowledge. But what it shows to them is that you are willing and able to develop these contacts. You're really interested, you're dedicated to getting industry knowledge. You are looking for potential mentors. You're motivated. You are, you're willing to take the extra step, because not everyone's doing this, right? So the people that are conducting informational interviews, I'll say, these are the people who are coming back to us in career services and saying, you know what, I did get that job. I got a referral from someone in the company, or, I had an informational interview and they were impressed that I had reached out. So they referred me to the hiring manager. I had an interview, and now, I have an internship for the fall, or, I'm interviewing for a full-time role. So this is really a way to break into industries or to organizations, even where you may not know anyone. It's always great if you can find a UCF alumni to start with. Again, it makes it a little less threatening when you can say, we have UCF in common. That automatically binds you a little bit, and alumni are typically so willing to share their expertise. But even if it's somebody you don't know, we as humans, sounds silly, but we as humans, we are programmed generally to like to talk about ourselves. Most people are super flattered when you say, could I have 10 or 15 minutes of your time to just ask you some questions about your job? there are few people who are going to say, oh, I would never, for the most part, we hear that people are very willing to do this. So how do you prepare for any type of networking? Obviously, you want to go in with a good attitude. You want to be positive and kind of optimistic that it will go well, because that will really come across in how confident you seem and how well prepared you seem. You want to know the purpose of the networking function. So if you're going to an event specifically, you want to make sure you understand, is this for a specific industry? Is it for a specific role, a specific company? Kind of do a little bit of your research before you get there so you seem knowledgeable and informed. If there's a guest list, have a sense of who will even be there, because then you may even be able to sort of plan and strategize ahead of time about some of the folks that you'd most like to talk to so that you can use your time wisely. Find out what the appropriate attire is. This can be a little bit tricky. Not every networking event or occasion has a dress code, but what we recommend is it's better typically to be overdressed than it is to be underdressed. If you show up in a suit and everyone else is just wearing, kind of business casual, that's not going to stand out so much as if you show up wearing jeans and everyone's wearing suits. And so, it's kind of taking the approach of, I'd rather come across as more professional than less professional, more put together than less put together, because again, it's your shot at making, a statement, making a first impression with the folks that you're meeting. Make sure to have your business cards if you prepare those, and also make sure that you bring copies of your resume. If you have an updated resume, it would be really important for you to bring that as well. And then prepare your elevator speech. We already went over some examples. We went over kind of what that should include, and that's okay if it's something that you rehearse. So, you can practice that, say it over and over a few times in the mirror. What we want to avoid though is that it sounds overly rehearsed. So you don't want to come across as robotic, or that this is just a script that you've memorized and that you kind of use over and over again, because again, we want this to be authentic and organic. We want it to be a good fit for the particular conversation. And so as you get to know people in these events and you learn, about what they do and about their industry, you can kind of tweak the way that you tell your story based on, what they would need to know about you. Some practicalities for networking occasions and events. Typically there will be name tags. And so obviously you'll want to make sure you have a name tag on. Make sure that you write your full name clearly, very legibly, big enough that it's easily readable from the distance of a handshake, or, right now, some people aren't giving handshakes. And so, that if somebody were standing a few feet away from you, they could still read your name. Name tags go on the right side of your chest. The reason for that is we typically shake hands with our right hand. And so your eye is drawn to another person's sort of right half of their body when you're going to shake a hand. And so that's where your name tag belongs. If you bring a purse or a backpack, think about whether or not there will be a place at the event for you to store it, or if you're comfortable carrying it around the whole time. Sometimes instead of bringing, a bag or a backpack, it's easier to bring something like a Padfolio where you can still stash, a pen and your cell phone and your business cards and your resumes, but it doesn't take up so much room. And the other thing to think about is, oftentimes at networking events, there will be food or beverages available. And so think about, do you have your hands full of stuff, or will you be able to manage, a small plate or a drink in one hand? It sounds silly to think about these logistics, but when you are in the situation, you'll feel much more awkward and uncomfortable if you're kind of caught off guard by these things. And so that's why we want to bring them up now. So when you're in social settings, and this doesn't even have to be a formal networking event. Networking can truly happen anywhere. Maybe your parents are having friends over for dinner. That's an amazing opportunity for networking. Maybe you are, again, at a religious service, during the week. Great chance for networking. Any place that you could potentially meet new people to learn from them, that is networking. And so really, some of the most simple conversational skills you can be building are listening. So spending, more time listening than you spend time talking, kind of getting to know people, understanding, their feelings, what they mean when they say things, how they're talking about things. Identifying commonalities. So what do you have in common with someone? It's always great practice to start with what you have that's similar as opposed to why you're different. asking open-ended questions so that they can really give you their feedback, their advice, their suggestions, their insight. So, saying to someone, so do you like your job? They could just say, yeah, I do. Instead, you could ask something like, I'd love to know what some of your favorite parts of your job are. That's an open-ended question so that they are forced to respond with details that are much more likely to help you decide, would that be a setting you would enjoy as well? Sharing common experiences, again, this doesn't always have to be so serious. It's okay, if it's your natural sense of humor to joke in a conversation and it seems like that's going to be well received by the person you're talking to, you don't have to change your personality for this. Another thing to remember is that networking a lot of times happens in group settings. And so, it's okay and encouraged to invite others to join the conversation or to join conversations that already have, several people talking. As you meet people at an event, introduce other folks. That really will go a long way in making you seem like, a team player, a collaborator, a good communicator. And it's just a great way to avoid, some of the awkwardness of a new situation. I mentioned on the last slide, finding commonalities. And you might say, well, how do I do that exactly? How do I draw some of that out in conversation? Here are some examples that we like to use, finding out where someone's from or how they like the area. What do they like to do in their free time, and asking about their hobbies or their interests. And maybe you have a hobby or an interest in common. Asking, maybe you're at a conference, asking what they thought about a previous session or the keynote speaker, asking what they're planning to attend next. Maybe you make plans to meet up for lunch and then attend the same session in the afternoon. And then asking about environment, maybe it's traveling or again, things that they like to do outside of work, professional time. And even if all of these things don't specifically relate to work, it is okay. It is all right if you kind of touch on some more personable, topics that are going to showcase that you're down to earth. You do things outside of school and outside of the job search. These are what we call career readiness competencies. And the reason I bring these up in a networking capacity are because these are the 8 kind of skill sets that employers say are most important when they're hiring recent graduates. And so these are some things to sort of emphasize in networking conversations. If you're thinking, I don't know what skills I have, or I don't know how to sell my skills to someone, I'm just not sure how to do that well. Think about these 8 skills and think about how you would give examples of these 8 skills to an employer that you met at a networking event. So for example, let's say you're talking to someone and you say, well, I have done an internship before and, I gained some really valuable skills. And you think, I don't know how to give examples of those things, or I don't really know what this employer would want to know. Maybe it's somebody you just met, you really don't know what their company does. These 8 skill sets, if you can give any examples of how you've been building these will apply to employers across every industry. They are not limited to just business or to just engineering or to just hospitality. These are for everyone. Everyone needs to be a good communicator, a good critical thinker, a team player, have an understanding of technology, and so on and so forth. Now, as we get back, at some point, and hopefully we're seeing more of this, but back to in-person events and in-person communication, we'll eventually get back to, I think, comfortable handshakes. And so we always like to include, some kind of tidbits about a handshake. You may have heard these before, but a strong handshake should be firm. It should last a few seconds. And while you're shaking someone's hand, you should be maintaining eye contact with them so that, they can tell that you're friendly, you're confident, that sort of thing. If you're in a group networking situation, maybe it's an event, a conference, something like that, a lot of folks feel, uncomfortable entering or exiting groups. Maybe a group of people is already talking and you'd really like to join, but you're not exactly sure how to do that. So you can start by just introducing yourself to one person. Maybe there's somebody who, is kind of on the outside of the group, or, you can kind of enter just by one point of access. That way you don't feel like you're making kind of a big announcement to the whole group that you're entering the conversation. And then they can sort of pull you into the group. At that point, they can help you kind of jump into the conversation. You can also introduce yourself to other people who are already alone, because that sort of furthers that idea of creating new groups, and new conversations for networking. So if you're alone and you notice a few other people are alone, go and, begin the networking by talking to those people who are probably in the same boat. They're looking for people to talk to, and start your networking there. Let's say you've been talking with the group for, a few minutes and you're ready to go and meet other people. Don't be afraid to excuse yourself. It's totally appropriate to say, this has been so wonderful. I've loved learning from all of you. I do want to go and have the opportunity to meet a few other people, so I'm going to excuse myself from the conversation. Short and sweet, and nobody's going to bat an eye about that. If somebody gives you their business card, and this will likely happen, hopefully you'll be offering people your business card as well. Look at it before you put it away, because you might notice something interesting about their role or their company, and that might help you to think of follow-up questions before you exit the conversation. Some other group networking kind of tidbits. You want to make eye contact with folks in the group and see if there's, again, space for you to enter. It's okay to sort of insert yourself into a conversation at networking events. Even if you don't get a chance to speak for a minute, you might enter a conversation and other people are talking, and you sort of have to wait for a break in the conversation to introduce yourself. That's totally fine. But you do want to extend your hand to the person immediately across from you first, and then to the rest of the members of the group. So make sure you do get a chance to introduce yourself to everyone. And then make sure that you're listening closely as other people introduce themselves as well. After a networking opportunity, and this might be an event, it might be an informational interview, it might be, a casual run-in, in the grocery store, but you happen to have a really great professional conversation. You can say something like, I've really enjoyed meeting you and I'd like to stay connected. What would be the best method to reach you in the future? And so hopefully that will sort of encourage the person to give you their business card or something like that if they have one. But maybe, maybe they say, well, really, a phone call would be the best way to reach me, and they give you their cell number. Or maybe they don't have a business card on them, but they say, here's my email address, and you can jot that down in your phone or take note of that. But really then the onus is on you to keep that relationship active. Take the lead on connecting with them on LinkedIn, sending them a thank you email, following up, every few months just to check in, see how they're doing. Or, maybe in your conversation, you talked about how you were in the process of applying to internships. If you land an internship, go back, follow up with the people that helped you get there or that gave you great advice, and thank them. Say, because of your advice, I was able to land this internship. I'm really excited about it. I hope that we can stay in touch, as I kind of continue to pursue XYZ field. So it's just being mindful of how you can kind of keep conversations going even after they've taken place. So definitely follow up with a thank you note or a thank you email. It's always great to send somebody a copy of your resume, especially if that's something you talked about. If you talked about your skills or your experience in the conversation, it's even great to say in the conversation, I'd love to follow up with you after this. Do you mind if I send you a copy of my resume? And really no one is going to say no to that. But then just, stay in touch, just like any other relationship that you might have with a friend or a family member. Make sure that you are putting in the work to maintain it, so that, if in 2 years you have an opportunity maybe to apply for something with their company, you don't want it to have been 2 years since they last heard from you at all. You want to keep those relationships active. So some important reminders about all of this. You've probably heard the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. But really, hopefully you've gathered from these slides that it's not even really who you know, it's who knows you. So it's who has seen your resume, and who has your business card, and who have you had a chance to tell your story to, your personal narrative, your professional kind of goals. And through this process, you just don't want to make people feel like you're only in it to get something out of it. Again, we talked about making the relationship the goal. That's going to help so that people don't feel used. You're building a relationship, and that's first and foremost the goal of networking. It's also about giving and not just getting. So, think about the ways that you can benefit someone when you're networking as well. If you're a student, a candidate, think about how you can benefit somebody's organization. Can you, what are the skill sets you bring to the table? Have you been listening to them talk about what they need And then how can you solve that problem or fill that gap? Be available to socialize. Networking doesn't only occur within professional organizations. So it's important, at student organizations, in class, that you're talking to people, you're getting to know people. You truly never know where a simple conversation might lead. Just because somebody is your contact, it does not mean that you have a relationship with them. And so it's not enough to just bump into someone, get their business card, and email them and say, can you help me get a job? You really need to invest the time first in these informational interviews, the relationship building. And that's where, it's going to take some time and you're going to have to commit to this. But that's where you're going to have the most success. Let's see. So then tell people what you're looking for. So as you meet people in different settings, people can't help you if they don't know what it is that you're after. So while we don't want getting a job or getting an internship to be the sole focus of your networking conversations, it's still important to share what your professional goals are, because let's say that somebody could definitely help you with your professional goals. They have a role that would be an excellent fit, but you never told them exactly what you were interested in. That's a missed opportunity. Yes, we want you to build the relationship, but part of that is being clear about your goals. So hopefully this has inspired or encouraged you, motivated you to attend some networking events in the future. We, of course, have Career Expo every fall and spring, and there's a statewide career fair for Florida every summer, usually in May. But we also have employer-led events, virtual networking, information sessions. Your student orgs that you're a part of likely have networking events. Professional associations for various industries that you might be a part of hold networking events. And so I know that it may be like, oh, well, I'm not ready for that, or that sounds, a little bit daunting, but I do truly encourage you to take advantage of these things, because again, think about that hidden job market that we talked about. That's where 80% of jobs are coming from. That is really where we want you to focus your energy and attention. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. This is some contact information for career services. If there is anything else we can do to support you, questions you might have about any of that, please don't hesitate to contact us. Follow us on these various social media accounts. We'd love to connect with you and engage with you there as well. But we hope, again, that this was a helpful start as you think about networking and what it means and how you can do it well. And we're here to help however we can. So hopefully we'll see you, in one-on-one appointments. You can make those via handshake and at some of the events we've just mentioned. But we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.